When I drank so much I ended up with a stomach bleed. Alice was off with her first love booking a presidential suite. The next day, she showed up at the hospital to see me, her expression indifferent. "Don't be jealous, you already know a man has to be my equal to be my husband." I chuckled. "Alice, no need for politeness. We're just bedmates," explaining this is unnecessary. When Alice came to the hospital, her dress was a bit wrinkled and her makeup was slightly smudged, evidence of a night spent out. Our company's project had just reached a successful milestone. We threw a celebration at a 5-star hotel last night, and a few notable planning department leaders were there. I went along with the socializing, but after a round of drinks, Alice, who was supposed to be the main host, was still missing. My assistant, Billy, hesitantly informed me that Alice had booked a presidential suite and entered it with some handsome guy about half an hour before. I forced myself to stay composed and took care of the evening's affairs. It wasn't until everyone left that I realized my stomach was killing me. Cough led to vomiting blood. Billy, freaked out, rushed me to the hospital. Luckily, it was just a stomach bleed. I needed rest to recover. Alice came to see me, perhaps partly because she cared about her employee, and partly because of our bedmate arrangement. 8 years ago, after graduating from college, I joined the ZS group and became her assistant. 5 years in, after one too many drinks, we ended up in bed together. From then on, our unspoken understanding kept things uncomplicated. But now it's starting to feel a bit pointless. I knew the guy she was with is named Peter. He's a renowned fashion designer and Alice's first love, who just got back from abroad. Back then, we were both single, just fulfilling physical needs, nothing to criticize. But now that her first love is back, my overstaying would just be out of line. After all, in the past 3 years, Alice never once thought to make this secret thing public. High achievers can be a bit proud. She probably thought that no matter what happened, all she had to do was look back, and I'd be there waiting for her. Too bad. If someone in this kind of relationship decides they're done, it's over. Alice, I already emailed you my resignation last night. Check your inbox. Alice didn't even blink, her face indifferent, clearly not buying it. Felix, are you jealous? No need to be jealous. You already know what I expect from my husband. I laughed. Alice, no need for all that. We're just bedmates, explaining more is unnecessary. Alice clearly didn't listen. She glanced at me, casually said, Peter just had some business abroad. Needed my help. Nothing happened last night, don't overthink it. She thought I was being difficult, sulking. But from the moment she walked into the suite with Peter, she should have realized some things just blow past a point of no return. Light explanations only serve as poor covers. If you don't expect or demand, you won't be handing anyone a knife to hurt you. That's why I just paused, pretended to be unwavered, and moved on. Alice grew up in a life of comfort. Besides money and power, there are few things she cares about. So talking more is pointless. After 2 weeks of rest at home, I returned to work. The CEO's office is on the top floor, with a stunning 270-degree view of the city skyline. At 9:25, I got coffee ready, checked my watch. Alice would be here in 5 minutes, as punctual as always. She fits every stereotype of the female CEO in those domineering CEO novels. Beautiful, wealthy, poised, and always knew what to do. The most disheveled I've ever seen her was only on a giddy bed, coaxed by me till she was defenseless. ZS Group, the city's biggest developer, was already thriving when I joined 8 years ago. Under Alice's management, we expanded into finance, new energy, and more. Business is booming. Yet no one knows how hard it is to satisfy this formidable leader. If the coffee's wrong, wrong sugar, wrong taste, she won't touch it. I remember my first day. I brewed 10 cups before she finally nodded. Leaving her office, I bumped into Billy. He looked around sneakily and shared some hot gossip. Word is that Peter is something else. Even someone as cold as Alice is wrapped around his finger. Billy's a natural gossip. He paints a picture as if he was there. He described how their young, strong-headed selves let a misunderstanding drive them apart. At the end, he scratched his head and summed it up. First loves are deadly. They just stand there, do nothing, and still win. I chuckled. There was some truth to that. Alice and I kept our secret well, no one at work knows. Our work professionalism gives no hint of romantic whimsy. So Billy freely shared stories of Alice and Peter right with me. I found out Peter was Alice's first love from a photo of them as teens, once stumbled upon in a drawer. The boy is breathtaking, smiling under sunset with a dog, as the girl stares warmly at him. The affection beams from the photo. At 9:40, Alice finally appeared, 10 minutes late, very unlike her. I was considering fresh coffee when her internal line rang. Walking in, I noticed the coffee, untouched on her desk. Peter wants a fashion show in Q City, and I've agreed. It's all yours to manage now, Alice said over the newspaper, strictly businesslike. I never mix work with personal matters, so I pointed out, Q City isn't ready for large events. Landscape development isn't done. Alice's eyes left the paper and went to my face, her patience thinning. I've made it clear already. This is happening, I've agreed. All you have to do is make sure this event runs smoothly and that Peter's creativity is showcased in full. She adjusted her fancy glasses on her nose and emphasized, I always keep work and personal life separate. This is your job, don't forget who you are. Alice wasn't wrong. Being an assistant means doing everything possible to meet the boss's needs. But she didn't quite get it. I've always remembered my place and never crossed the line. So I just nodded silently. Right as I was about to leave, I remembered the coffee that had long gone cold. I went back to the table and, under Alice's surprised gaze, picked up the cup. She grabbed my wrist, and I looked down to find her pulling a jewelry box out of her suit pocket. For you. Inside the box was a moon-shaped tie clip, shining gently. It clearly wasn't cheap. Alice, you said to keep work and personal separate. If it's a work reward, it should come from the admin department. If it's something personal, then I can't accept it. I quietly closed the box, gently put it back on the table, and turned to leave. Alice called after me, sounding a bit puzzled. Are you still upset? I looked at her calmly, shook my head with a distant tone, and said, Alice, I'm not your lover, so there's no need to try to sweet-talk me. Outside, I took a deep breath and returned to my work. The tie clip Alice bought was from a small brand I really liked. Once, when I went with Alice to Moon to pick gifts for clients, I noticed a jewelry series themed after the sun and moon. I stood at the counter, fascinated. After paying, Alice saw my interest and asked which one I liked, except for one. That was a pair of couple rings. Sun for him, moon for her, complementing each other perfectly. She was right, she could buy me anything from the series, except those rings, because I wasn't qualified. So I just shook my head and didn't say anything, soon forgetting about it. I didn't expect her to remember and buy the tie clip to appease me. Some sweet talk might work on lovelorn young men, but not on me. A few days later, I regretted taking on this fashion show gig. I didn't expect the hardest part would be Peter, not the event. As a designer, he had his unique taste and was picky about everything. Billy came to me with a grim face, saying Peter disliked the gouging's color and wanted it replaced. I was already overwhelmed with coordinating the setup materials for his theme and almost lost it. To accommodate his classic style, I had called in favors to borrow a highly valuable antique gouging from a famous collector. Thanks to my professional skills honed over the years, I calmed down quickly. I decided to talk to Peter. As I was about to knock, I heard Alice's voice inside. Felix has been with me for years, he's reliable. You can trust him with everything. I paused by the door, no longer wanting to enter. You rarely praise anyone, so Felix must mean a lot to you. Peter, with his probing tone, intrigued me. I considered myself discreet, so I wondered how he caught on. 8 years is enough for even a dog to understand its owner's temper. Alice's tone was flat, without a hint of emotion, like she was talking about something trivial. Even though I knew my place, it still stung a little. I turned away, replacing the gouging for Peter. The fashion show was a hit. Peter took the stage in his emerald green velvet suit, charming everyone. He raised his wine glass and thanked the crowd. I have to thank someone special. We were separated by misunderstandings and lost time. But now, I want to tell her. I'll always be by her side, she deserves all my love. Peter proclaimed his passion to the world, and applause thundered in the room, cameras flashing like crazy. Under the lights, the ring on his finger glistened. Moon's sun-themed couple ring. Only she has the right to wear it. A wave of emotion hit me, and I involuntarily glanced at Alice. Countless curious eyes were on her. Alice smiled affectionately. Her usually cold demeanor warmed, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. After 8 years, I could tell her mood. Peter had made an announcement without her agreement. Alice always plans meticulously and hates when others act without permission. I blinked away the mist in my eyes. By the time I looked back, her displeasure had vanished, replaced with gentle affection. Peter was different. She openly favored him. I remember our night 3 years ago after some drinks. I messed up at work, and she yelled at me. Depressed, I went drinking at a bar, and she found me. After venting, we both drank a lot. In fragmented memories, it was that smile that made my mind go blank, and I kissed her on impulse. Felix, time to clear the backstage. The staff's reminder snapped me back to reality. I chuckled wryly and continued working. It was midnight when I finished. The company's location was remote, and no ride-sharing cars wanted to come. Bored, I was kicking pebbles when Alice's Maserati roared up. Peter rolled down the car window and stuck his head out, grinning. Hey, can I ask Felix for a favor? Alice is a bit too happy today. She's drunk. Of course, no problem. It actually helps me out. The car was filled with the strong smell of alcohol, mixed with a hint of men's cologne. Alice was sitting there with her eyes closed, her shirt unbuttoned at the top, and her tie loosely draped around her neck, looking completely relaxed. Peter was muttering about her lack of self-control with alcohol, but his hands were busy massaging her temples. The two of them were as comfortable as an old married couple. I quietly drove, taking them to Alice's villa. Alice was used to living alone. She had a driver and a housekeeper, but they didn't stay overnight. It was late, and I helped Peter carry Alice inside. Alice lay on the bed, her eyes slightly open from the alcohol. Peter was about to unbutton her shirt when she grabbed his wrist to stop him. Alice, come on, let's get you changed so you can sleep. Peter tried coaxing her, but she firmly held onto his wrist, making him freeze awkwardly. Just then, I entered with a cup of hot water and saw the scene. Peter quickly regained his composure and smiled at me, probing. Felix, you're familiar with this place, right? You come here often? I gave a small, wry smile and shook my head, not wanting to dive into that conversation. I've been here a few times, helped Alice with some paperwork. As he seemed to want to continue, I interrupted. Peter, could you look after Alice? It's getting late, and I should be heading out. I set the cup down on the bedside table and turned to leave, but Alice grabbed my fingers. Felix, don't go. Alice mumbled as if dreaming about something unpleasant. I pried her fingers off gently, forcing a smile. Alice has me mixed up with someone else. She must really be out of it. Peter's handsome face cracked slightly. He asked sharply, to me and to Alice, who's Felix? As I left the villa, the night air was refreshingly cool. Walking out in such a clear night helped clear my head. Normally, we kept things professional and maintained a proper boss-employee distance. I knew when I first got close to Alice with my secret that there couldn't be anything between us. But then, without realizing it, I fell for her. I knew it was just a conscious infatuation, nothing more. Peter's question had me feeling oddly guilty. I felt like a lowly thief, having momentarily stolen something that was originally his. First thing the next day, Peter cornered me in the break room. He was taller, his striking good looks carrying an intense expression, a bit intimidating. I wasn't interested in how their night ended, but he must have noticed something off, prompting him to talk to me. It was less about confronting me and more about marking his territory. I know you were with Alice. His brow lifted slightly, clearly on the defensive. Women are all the same, especially powerful ones. They play around until they're bored. You've been with her for 8 years. You must know what kind of person she is. You should know your place and her position. Her ambitions, her family. They need someone like me to support her. Peter hit the nail on the head. He wasn't just a famous fashion designer, but also the heir to X Group, the beloved son of Jack, a financial mogul in Jingqing. Early on, X Group had acquired land by Chili Lake, where the government plans to build a new CBD. Everyone's competing for a piece of the action, ZS Group included. So, he leaned down, searching my face inch by inch. Not seeing the expected distress or humiliation, he seemed momentarily surprised, then continued. So, I'd prefer not to see you at ZS Group anymore. I set my half-made coffee aside, listened to him finish, and then continued brewing my coffee. Peter, you misunderstand. With Alice, it was just about mutual comfort, nothing emotional. I'm very clear about that. None of Alice's affection was ever mine. If I ever let myself get carried away, the outcome would be disastrous for me. I paused, pulling out my phone and showing him an email. I've resigned. The break room fell into a brief silence. I haven't approved your resignation. Alice's cool voice shattered the quiet. Clad in a sharp business suit, she showed no signs of last night's disarray. Peter's eyes lit up, and he quickly walked over, affectionately linking arms with her, the ring on his finger glinting harshly. Alice, what are you doing here so early? It's my fault for last night. He paused just right, leaving plenty to the imagination. Alice patted his hand reassuringly. I'll be at the fashion show this afternoon. You head back for now. After this display of intimacy, Peter left, smug. As he departed, he glanced at me, reminding, look after Alice for us, Felix. Having wasted a bit of time, my coffee had cooled again, forcing me to brew a fresh cup. Once back in my office, Alice spoke first. What do you want, a promotion or a raise? Without lifting my eyes, I set the coffee on the table and replied coldly. Alice, I sent you my resignation a month ago. By labor law, if you notify a month in advance, you can resign without approval. Alice, with the laziness of a hangover, rubbed her temples, not really absorbing my words. Felix, don't be silly. I just negotiated some land. You can lead the project and I'll double your salary. How about it? Alice rarely showed this softer side. To outsiders, she's decisive, tough, and commanding. But only I know she wasn't always this way. The year I joined ZS Group, she had just come back from abroad to inherit the family business. Her grandfather had built the empire from the ground up. But he only had one daughter, who gave birth to Alice after getting married. Alice's mom was kinda love-obsessed and didn't pay much attention to her. Her grandfather raised her. When Alice was 10, her grandfather passed away. Her parents divorced, and within 2 months, her mom remarried. Her stepdad came from humble beginnings. He was smart and ambitious, quickly charming Alice's mom into bringing him into the company. Step by step, he took control. Alice had the title of the heiress, but no one thought much of her. Her stepdad didn't help, throwing obstacles in her way. I was there for her through it all. I stayed up late working on plans, accompanied her to boozy business meetings, and went to construction sites with her, getting dusty and dirty. I saw her at her worst and was there for her triumphs. I know what she gave up and what she gained. I've had feelings for her. One time we met with a female investor. After a few drinks, that old creep hit on me, and there was nothing I could do. Alice saw it, flipped out, and almost slapped the guy. I had to stop her. No surprise, we lost that investment. At that time, her stepdad and some top managers were making life difficult for her. That deal was crucial for her. Outside, she screamed at me for the first time, Felix, I'm not so desperate that you need to sell yourself for my sake. Her eyes were red, voice hoarse, yet she was captivating. Eventually, I watched her find her footing and bury those dark days beneath her feet. But she never got teary-eyed over me again. So it's time for me to leave. Alice, can you sign this for me? I pointed to the blank spot on my resignation letter, calmly running through today's schedule. Meeting with Leo at 10:30 a.m. We were supposed to check out a site in the afternoon, but since you want to attend Peter's show, I've rescheduled it for tomorrow morning. Is that okay? Alice stared at the paper, ignoring me. But I didn't care and pressed on. Alice, today's my last day at ZS Group. I'll handle the resignation paperwork this afternoon. I've already handed everything over to Billy. He'll accompany you to Peter's show. She finally looked up, obviously ticked off by my indifferent tone. Felix, do you really think I can't manage without you? I sighed deeply and left the office. I started packing my stuff. I had accumulated a lot over the years, but I didn't want any of it. Billy came over, nervously listening for noise from the CEO's office before asking me sadly, Felix, are you really leaving? What about me? You're the only one who can handle Alice. I chuckled, trying to comfort him. Alice isn't a monster. You'll get used to it. Just because you're used to having me around doesn't mean you need me. You'll be fine. The same goes for Alice. She got used to me being around, not needing me particularly. I'm aware of that. Near lunchtime, I got an email from HR. Charlie arranged lunch with the chairman of X Group and wanted Alice to join. Charlie, of course, is Alice's stepdad. I called Alice to let her know. She coldly agreed. At noon, Billy drove us to the restaurant in silence. Alice stayed cold until we stopped. When I suggested Billy accompany her inside, she snapped, Felix, you're still on the clock. So I went in with her. In the private room, besides Charlie and some top managers, Jack and Peter were there too. When Peter saw me, he tensed up but quickly put on a friendly face. He affectionately greeted Alice and led her to sit next to him. The business folks exchanged glances, probably already catching the drift. After a few drinks, the conversation turned serious. Jack, in his 60s, dressed sharply in a traditional suit, looked authoritative. He sipped his wine and said, Charlie, I was reluctant to sell the land by the lake. He looked at Alice approvingly, then glanced at Peter with a resigned smile. Peter sings Alice's praises endlessly to me. He insists she can handle the land well. So I decided to let it go. So the highly sought-after lakeside property was going to ZS Group. Charlie, a sly and smooth talker, stood up, pouring Jack another drink. Speaking like a doting father, my daughter here can't live up to Peter's praise. She's young and needs more experience. She'll need your guidance. Inside the company, Alice and Charlie were at odds, but outwardly they always showed a united front. I quietly ate my food, noticing Alice's slight frown and Peter gazing at her adoringly. Jack chuckled, patting Peter's hand. Peter proposed, Alice, when are you planning to marry my son? He looked at Alice, waiting for an answer. Peter seemed nervous, accidentally knocking over his wine glass, spilling it everywhere. This little incident eased the tension in the room. Jack looked at his son lovingly and said, You're about to get married. How can you still be so clumsy? Alice, I've only got one son, so you better take good care of him. Okay? Everyone's eyes turned to Alice. I put my chopsticks down and looked too. Alice smiled warmly, her gaze slipping past me and settling on Peter. She spoke seriously. Okay. Amidst the congratulations, Charlie put on a proud face as he looked at Alice. But I noticed his hands at his sides were clenched tightly into fists. In recent years, Alice had secured her footing in ZS Group, gradually pushing Charlie out of the decision-making circle. Yet Charlie wasn't ready to give up. He kept trying to fight back, both openly and in secret. They'd been fiercely competing over some pieces of land, and now the outcome was finally settled. He lost. Charlie took a sip of wine and then looked up with a polite smile. It's a good day. Alice and Peter have set the date for their wedding, and I've got something to announce too. Some of you might not know, but from my previous marriage, I have a son. I've been too busy with work to have him by my side, but he's done well. After graduating from college, he's made a name for himself at ZS Group. I'm proud of him. Charlie's gaze scanned the room and landed on me. My heart sank as he pulled a smile filled with pride and anticipation, reaching out to me. Felix, come here to Dad. A stunned silence. Peter gasped, No way. Everyone finally realized what was happening and stared at me in shock. I calmly stood up and walked towards Charlie. As I passed Alice, I noticed her composed face, though her eyes were frosty, emanating a heavy aura. Jack's probing gaze fell on me, and he spoke meaningfully. Such good fortune, having both children excel like this. You flatter me, Charlie replied. Felix has learned a lot from Alice over the years and can handle things on his own now. I planned to have him work under Alice, taking charge of those lands around Chile Lake. I'm already halfway in the grave. I just want to enjoy some peace, spending time with the grandkids. Money can't be earned endlessly, it's better to let the young ones give it a shot. To the higher-ups, those words sounded like he was stepping aside. The look they gave me was a mix of shock and complexity. "Felix, go toast everyone," Charlie instructed me cheerfully. He must have been in a great mood because he downed several cups, his face turning red. I was about to raise my glass when Alice put a hand on mine and said apologetically, "Felix just got out of the hospital for a stomach bleed. He can't drink. I'll drink on his behalf. After all, I am his sister." She dragged out the word sister with emphasis, and I could almost see everyone in the room concocting some dramatic family saga in their heads. Peter shot me a look filled with cold resentment. I gently moved Alice's hand aside and raised my glass with ease, toasting everyone, thanks to Alice's guidance. I've learned a lot over these 8 years at ZS Group. Who I am related to doesn't really matter. What's important is that I'm setting out on my own path. I've already quit. Today is my last day at ZS Group, but I hope we'll cross paths again in the future. After delivering those polite words, I took a small sip, satisfied to see Charlie's face twisting with anger, though he had to hold it in. The dinner was charged with undercurrents. Afterward, Peter quickly led Alice away. Once everyone else had left, Charlie's suppressed anger erupted. "I brought you into ZS Group to keep an eye on that girl. All these years, you didn't give me a peep, and you've even helped her against me. I'm your only father. Everything will be yours one day. I'm doing all this for you, and you just up and leave. Do you even understand my intentions?" I laughed, meeting his fierce gaze with a calm, cold voice. "Heartless and ungrateful. Didn't I learn that from you? You use me, I use you. Fair, isn't it?" I doubt Charlie remembered this enraged face of his mirrored his look from when he stormed out of the house years ago. Back then, Mom had just passed away, and he got involved with a rich lady from the repair shop. He hardly came home. One day, after my nap, I found he'd taken everything valuable from the house, saying he was leaving to work. I was old enough to understand and clung to his leg, refusing to let go. Enraged, he slapped me, saying, "Father and son, both stubborn as mules. Go to your aunt, I'm no longer your dad." After that, I bounced between relatives' houses like a ball until a kind neighbor took me in. With their help, I finished high school and got into college. Then Charlie showed up, claiming he was my benefactor. His support came with strings attached. He wanted me to work at ZS Group as Alice's assistant and report back to him. I turned him down in anger, only to learn later that he had latched onto Alice's mom via the rich lady and seized control of ZS Group. But when Alice returned, they were reluctant to leave the company to an outsider. Having squandered his youth, Charlie couldn't father any more children. That's when he remembered he had a son. 6 months later, I was deep in debt from a failed startup when Charlie came knocking again. This time, I agreed. ZS Group was a leading company, and working with Alice gave me a lot to learn. If you could marry Alice, I wouldn't contest anything in the company. After all, wouldn't it all belong to my grandson in the future? That was exactly what Charlie said. Coming from a humble background, he inherently believed in the superiority of bloodlines. So, regarding my secret relationship with Alice, he always turned a blind eye. Unfortunately, his dreams got shattered today. From now on, we go our separate ways. You're not my dad, and I'm not your son. Those words completely crushed Charlie. I turned to leave, but there was Alice. I saw the storm brewing in her eyes, unsure of how long she'd been listening outside. "Felix, I underestimated you." Her brows were sharp and cold, yet her eyes were frighteningly bright. "Alice." It was the first time I ever called her by her name. He's him and I'm me. Sure, he wanted to use me, but I never betrayed you. In these 8 years, I believe my work has been worthy of the salary you paid. "Oh, really?" Alice suddenly laughed, her lips curling in sarcasm. "But did you live up to my trust? When you were pleasing me in bed, was your mind just scheming against me? I'm sure Charlie taught you everything he knew. After all, he got his position the same way back in the day." Like father, like son. She bent down, her fingers tracing circles on my cheek, the warmth of her touch masking the chill in her words. But I'm not my mother. I've got a clear head. Felix, 3 years ago, I found out about your little connection with Charlie. You cozied up to me and I played along. No harm done playing with something that's freely given. Letting you sleep with me for 3 years with nothing to gain. Felix, aren't you just pathetic and vile? How do you even compare to Peter? You can't hold a candle to him. Now that he's back, you think you can walk away unscathed? Dream on. Bone-chilling cold seeped into my limbs. The shock stole my breath, leaving me staring at her in disbelief. Turns out, from beginning to end, the joke was on me. I thought I was clear-headed, yet after countless struggles and inner turmoil, I still lost myself in my heart, step by step. Only Alice stayed truly clear-headed. She never loved me, not for a second. She watched me as if watching a comedy for years. Felix, did you forget how I got here and what happens to those who betray me? You should know very well. Her icy stare slowly sized me up. That plot in District S, you leaked the bottom price to Charlie. Alice's tone was not questioning but stating. She informed me the new company that auctioned off that plot last month had Charlie as its major shareholder behind the scenes. These past years, he'd been stifled by Alice at ZS Group, so he quietly started his own company outside. Save your strength, don't argue. Only you and I knew the bottom price. I had no clue about any of this, but she had already convicted me of betrayal. For money, you do anything, right? Her gaze filled with disdain and loathing, thrusting me into an icy pit. Slap. Unable to endure anymore, I shoved her away and delivered a fierce slap across her face. She merely brushed it off with a slight smile, wiping the blood from her lip. Her eyes regained their chilly glare as she looked at me. I can guarantee you won't survive in this industry. Better switch careers while you can. Watching her stride away, for the first time, I found her truly repugnant. Alice was indeed as good as her word. By the afternoon, everyone at the company received an email from HR. I was fired for severe violations of company rules, and due to a non-compete agreement, I couldn't work at a similar job in related companies for 3 years. In other words, my career in this industry was completely over. Billy was shocked speechless, at a loss for words, not understanding how things spiraled out of control in just a few hours. Amidst curious and probing gazes, I calmly gathered my things and walked out of the ZS Group building. The weather didn't cooperate, as the early spring rain fell incessantly, draping the world in a misty veil, yet my steps grew firmer. Alice had once said that after 8 years, even a dog should know its owner's temper. But after 8 years, she never really understood me. So much so, that half a year later, when she saw me at an industry exchange meeting, her expression was one of rare surprise. Through the crowd, her eyes settled on me, dark and complex. Peter, following her gaze, looked my way, and as expected, his face turned dark immediately. He brought Alice over to where I stood, his brows raised, a note of provocation in his voice. Felix, if I'm not mistaken, you got fired from ZS Group and shouldn't be working in the same field for 3 years. And yet, here you are just 6 months later. Guess ZS Group's legal department will be busy. I was about to speak when a clear voice came from behind me. The people we hire at H Group don't need ZS Group's legal department to worry about. Peter's eyes widened, trying hard to maintain composure. When he finally spoke, his voice trembled. Jenny, what are you doing here in Jing City? No wonder he was surprised. H Group, Southeast's largest developer, had just stepped into the Jing City market this year. This formidable upstart immediately pressured ZS Group, snapping up several prime lands. Jack had thick-skinnedly tried visiting many times for potential collaboration, only to be subtly turned down. Jenny approached and I instinctively took a step back. Alice raised an eyebrow subtly, her gaze flitting between Jenny and me, a dim complexity in her expression. Peter cleared his throat. When he spoke again, his face bore a smile. I was just afraid Jenny might be deceived. Felix used to be Alice's assistant. He was fired for misconduct. He paused deliberately, stealing a glance at me before continuing. I won't get into the specifics, but he caused significant losses for ZS Group. I just wanted to warn Jenny. Trust is key when recruiting assist. Jenny shook her head with a gentle smile, but her tone was distant. Peter, you've got it wrong. Felix was my junior in school. I know him well enough. Peter might have misunderstood something. Felix wasn't my assistant, he's the founder of Bright Moon Design Studio, and he's the expert our H group specifically hired for the new generation product development. Peter couldn't even keep his smile and stammered. Jenny, you're kidding, right? Jenny chuckled and kindly added, Felix is also the keynote speaker for our Smart Living project. He'll be on stage in half an hour. Alice, who had been the invisible person in the room, finally spoke up. She gave me a deep look. Felix, I've really underestimated you. I ignored her and went straight back to the conference room to prepare my presentation materials. Alice probably wasn't happy about it, because during a break, just as I stepped out of the restroom, she pulled me into an empty meeting room. It was close to evening, and the room was dark. Through the large glass windows, the sunset looked bloody. She stood on her toes, and her hot breath was all over my ear, her voice husky. Felix, how long did it take you to cozy up to a new patron? Is this how you get back at me? Don't forget, whatever that woman can give you, I can too. I almost burst into a laugh. Alice might have amnesia and forgotten that 6 months ago she personally pushed me away. Now all this pretentiousness was just her possessiveness acting up. The day I was fired, I blocked all of Alice's contact info, but I still heard a lot about her from Billy now and then. Billy said he made her 20 cups of coffee, but Alice wasn't satisfied and ended up smashing the cup in anger. He said she got multiple calls from inside the company, but Alice always hung up without a word. He once saw her holding a jewelry box, staring at it for ages. He mentioned she got drunk and kept mumbling my name, Felix. I got fed up and blocked Billy too. I knew Alice was just used to having me around. I left, and it was like losing something she had always relied on. She hated being abandoned. If Alice had really cared, she would have known my college major was architectural design. I was cocky right after graduation, started a small studio with some classmates, and we worked on designs for smaller developers. We lacked experience and hit roadblocks everywhere, leading to the studio's closure and me drowning in debt. Because of Charlie, I later joined ZS Group. The skills I have today, I learned those bit by bit thanks to Alice. I even went for a part-time master's degree, spending all my free time studying. I never gave up on my youthful dreams. After 8 years, these experiences gave me the confidence to leave gracefully and start anew. In some ways, I owe a part of my success to Alice. She could always trust me completely. She'd genuinely praise my creativity, acknowledge my contributions, and appreciate my hard work. She wouldn't look down from a high horse, watching me struggle alone in a one-sided emotional drama until I exhausted my last bit of affection and eventually left with scars. Can you? My words visibly struck Alice. Her mouth opened as if to retort, but she said nothing. I firmly pushed her aside, taking a deep breath. So, stop with this nonsense. Deep down, you know it won't change anything. Alice stood frozen, a distant look in her eyes. These 8 years, in your heart, our relationship was just… I interrupted, impatient. Alice, stop deluding yourself. Even if I told you otherwise, would you cancel your wedding with Peter for me? You wouldn't. What we have means nothing compared to your ambition and future. No one's foolish enough to turn their back on money. We're adults. Weighing options is a basic skill. Alice slowly released me, her face crestfallen, her gaze confused. I took the opportunity to push past her, opening the door to leave. Peter was standing right outside, his face distorted, eyes fierce. Everything happened so suddenly that when Peter flung his glass of red wine at me, I couldn't dodge in time. Alice, you better have a good explanation. Why are you still tangled up with this man? Peter was furious, all traces of his usual suave appearance gone. Alice stepped forward, blocking his path, her usually cool voice now infused with anger. Peter, can you just calm down? Peter looked hurt, glaring at me. Why do you keep haunting me? Do you have no shame going after someone else's woman? I calmly pointed at the surveillance camera above, hinting, "Peter, if you keep up with the insults, I won't hesitate to call the police." Peter was about to say more but was stopped by Alice. Peter apologized to Felix. His face turned ghost white in disbelief as he looked at Alice. Seeing she wouldn't back down, he was too mad to speak, gave me a hard glare, and stormed off in his polished shoes. Alice turned back, apologetic. "I apologize on Peter's behalf." I smirked, signaling her to come closer. A flash of excitement crossed Alice's eyes, and she eagerly bent down to hear me say, "The base price for the S-zone land, aside from you and me, there's a third person who knows." That day, Peter cornered me in the pantry because he went into Alice's office and saw that jewelry box. Next to the box was the proposal I just submitted for the S-zone land. Being the sharp person Alice was, she immediately realized the truth, and her face darkened. As we brushed past each other, she grabbed my arm. "I'll get to the bottom of this and give you an explanation." "No need." I turned my head and saw it was Jenny. "Come on, the presentation's about to start." Alice stood there. I knew she watched me for a long time, but this time I didn't look back. I got on stage and gave the presentation. It was a hit, and the crowd went wild with applause. After all, the layout I handled had a utility rate of 90%, and it was the first to design small elevated spaces, perfect for those just entering the market. Alice sat in the front row. I could see the shock in her eyes. For the past 8 years, she'd been the star on stage, and I was the one handling all the behind-the-scenes stuff. After the meeting, Alice wanted to see me off. I turned and got into Jenny's car. In the dim streetlight, her lonely shadow stretched far, quickly swallowed by the night. I quietly closed the window. Jenny glanced at me, smiled, and said, "She's really amazing, but not the right person for you." I laughed too. Yeah, no point wasting time on that. Not long after, Alice came looking for me. I had already moved, no idea how she got my address. When I got home from work, she was standing downstairs. Winter had come to the city, and she was covered in a thin layer of snow like dust. No idea how long she had been there. I looked straight ahead, tightened my coat collar, and kept walking. She called to me softly, "Felix, I'm sorry." I wasn't in the mood for her apologies. As we passed, she grabbed my hand, pleading, "Can you give me a chance to make it right?" I scoffed. "Make it right? How?" She pulled out a jewelry box from her pocket, so painfully familiar. But inside wasn't the tie clip. It was a pair of sun and moon rings, sparkling with a circle of diamonds. She held the rings carefully, like they were precious. I used to be so focused on expanding ZS Group and fulfilling my grandfather's wish that I thought I couldn't care about anything else. But when you left, I realized how important you were to me. I know you grew up without a real home, which is why you're so obsessed with designing homes, making them perfect. I want to give you a home too. Felix, can we start over? Alice looked at me, like she wanted to lay her heart out in the open for me to see clearly. I couldn't help but laugh. "Alice, you're really a joke. All those years I treated you sincerely, and you didn't give an ounce back. Now you want to beg for sincerity from me? Are you delusional? Do you really think Felix, am just going to wait around for you, coming when you call? You've overestimated yourself and underestimated me. Felix, love fiercely and hate fiercely. I never go back. Stop dreaming." I jerked my hand away, and the ring spun through the air, vanishing who knows where. Alice stared blankly at the snow, her face pale, like all the strength had left her. After a long while, she snapped out of it, her eyes red, managing a wry smile. "How am I supposed to find it like this?" I walked straight on, hearing her weak sobbing behind me. "If I can't find it, does that mean you won't want me anymore?" I didn't stop for a second. That night, it started to rain, the cold wind making the windows rattle. After a hot shower, I wrapped up in a robe to close the window and saw Alice still downstairs. Bending down, bare hands searching desperately in the snow, she looked so pitiful in the cold wind and rain. Expressionless, I shut the window and drew the curtains. The next morning, she was gone when I left for work. After work, Billy called me, sounding almost submissive. Felix, Alice has pneumonia from a high fever. She's in the hospital. Could you come see her? She keeps calling your name in her sleep. Well, that's her own fault. From now on, don't tell me anything about her. Billy's voice was still on the line when I hung up. I focused on my work, no distractions. I had a big project going on. Peter wasn't a romantic fool. Noticing Alice's hesitations, he quickly backed out. Jack cherished his son and naturally was unhappy with Alice. So his previous promises were off the table. Now, the 7 Mile Lake plot was up for competitive bidding. Jenny told me the government had a say in the planning, leaving little room for developers. Design was crucial. If our design proposal was strong enough, we had a good shot at winning the bid. Money wasn't a problem. What ZS Group could offer, H Group could too. I'd been preparing for this for a long time, confident as ever. On the day of the bidding, thanks to our ahead-of-the-curve design, H Group snagged the 7 Mile Lake plot without a hitch. ZS Group's foothold in the city began to crumble, with losses in the billions. The celebration went on till late. My coworkers got me to drink a few rounds. Never much of a drinker, I slipped out for some air. The wind on the balcony was fierce. After getting enough of it, I turned and saw Alice. Congratulations, Felix. She spoke with difficulty, pain clear in her eyes. You're doing even better without me. No, it's not about you, you never influenced me. I'm doing better because I stuck to my dreams. Alice still didn't quite get me. She didn't understand that I was now a bird soaring free, not needing her love to prove myself. Goodbye, Alice. We brushed past each other one last time. The sun rose, spring's light shone bright, like a new beginning. Felt amazing.